Bonjour à tous, je suis Nicolas Riol, je suis président de l'Alliance Digitale. Je me présente tout de même. Tony il est basé aux US, il vient de New York, il est venu exprès. Ça fait maintenant 4 ans qu'on invite le Tech Lab à nous rejoindre. Donc juste pour ceux qui ne savent pas, le Tech Lab, c'est au sein de l'IAB le lieu qui crée les standards de la publicité en ligne. Donc les formats IAB, c'est là-bas que ça se gère. Le protocole OpenRTB, le fait que quel est le langage pour que d'un serveur à un autre on puisse se parler, ça se passe au Tech Lab. Tous les protocoles, que ce soit autour de la CTV, etc., tout se passe là-bas. Donc il était très important pour nous que sur le marché français, on puisse avoir une influence importante sur ces standards, les comprendre, faire la connexion évidemment avec le Tech Lab. Voilà. So I'm going to switch in English now. So to welcome Tony. Tony, thank you very much for being with us. And we are going to talk about technical standard of the industry, of course. So I don't know if all of you have been present for the keynote of Tony just before. The idea is to continue the conversation. So first question for Tony. So you just cover the necessity of the supply chain transparency and all the benefits going with that on your previous keynote. Where do we stand in this domain today? And also maybe for the next 3 years?
Sure. So quick show of hands. Who's familiar with the Tech Lab? Okay. All right.
So when I was speaking in French, I was explaining what is the Tech Lab.
Got it.
So just so you know, because obviously you know.
So now everyone's familiar with
now
the
you
Tech
know
Lab.
what I was saying.
I would say I would give where we are from a supply chain transparency perspective. If I were to grade us, I would give us a B- in terms of transparency, and I think that's partially due to adoption of our standards. I think we could see more rigorous adoption of some key initiatives like the supply chain object, demand chain object, buyers.json. So I'd say B- to date, room for improvement. And then, I think that over the next several years, I think transparency around issues like privacy, green initiatives, zero carbon initiatives, I think are going to become even more paramount, which, I think it's going to require adoption not just based on ethics. I think it's going to require adoption based on government regulation. I mean, we're already seeing that in privacy. I think we're going to see the same thing in green. I think we're going to see government regulations around green initiatives across all industries, not just digital advertising, but all industries. So I think the next several years, the ability to quantify, we talk about supply chain transparency. I think it was really the ability to quantify the supply chain. How do we measure the supply chain, which inherently has transparency. But I think the ability to measure the supply chain over the next several years will be paramount in green initiatives, cross-environment measurement. So be able to measure advertising and performance across all screens, whether it be your laptop, your mobile phone, your connected television, your linear TV, your linear TV. I think we'll see greater initiatives around that. So I think that the key areas are measurement, carbon, privacy. I think are going to be some of the three big initiatives.
So you say we are in. You're rating yourself B+. So
B-.
B-. Okay. So I don't know what's the translation in French school. It's a 12. I don't know, 14, something like that.
I don't know the French score.
So talking about the future and when we are going to reach A+. I know you're currently working on the strategic agenda of the Tech Lab. So what's going to be the main topic and priority for the next 3 years, 2023 until 2025? Can you give us a spoiler on what's going to be the main topic addressed by the Tech Lab?
Yeah, that's a great question. The themes we are going to be focused on are our North Star, if you will, for the next at least 3 years, probably 5. Privacy is certainly top of the list. Privacy, the ability to balance consumer privacy against addressability is going to become more challenging, not less challenging over the next 5 years. And I think that's as more jurisdictions stand up their own privacy law or interpretation of privacy law, we're going to see more cross-jurisdictional privacy compliance challenges. I can give you one example. In the U.S., the U.S. is comprised of 50 states. 5 of those states have enacted or evolved their privacy legislation going into 2023. Their definition of notice and consent and privacy compliance differs for each state. So just in the U.S. alone, we're going to have 5 different privacy laws on the books that media companies and advertisers and the advertising technology infrastructure is going to have to comply with. That alone is a challenge. And then when we see the ongoing evolution of GDPR here in Europe, the pending outcomes of the ECJ's ruling on the Belgian APD, we're going to have to wait and see how that turns out. There are DPA-like structures that have been stood up in Brazil. India has just recently introduced privacy legislation into their parliament. Australia, privacy is on the table. Japan. This is a global issue. This isn't just a European or US only issue. And as I said downstairs, I think Europe's really led here and kind of shown the rest of the world the way. But it's every jurisdiction, every country, every region, every state, every province is going to have their own privacy laws. So it's going to result in a patchwork of regulatory compliance, which is going to be a challenge. So a key focus for us is how do we create technical frameworks to streamline that compliance for advertisers, for ad technology, for media companies. So that's going to be a big focus of ours. So that's one. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but there's a lot. The other is what we're calling our Advanced TV Initiative. So 3 weeks ago in New York, we announced our Advanced Television Initiative. And I use that term very carefully. Our Advanced Television Initiative is intended to address reconciliation, audit, cross-audience interoperability across all television environments, linear cable, satellite, broadcast, as well as streaming television. So we're really taking on a universal measurement and interoperability framework across all of TV. Now, the beauty of this is that as audiences migrate from legacy television, watching on cable, and as we move more to IP-delivered television or streaming television, this framework can come with us. It's like building a bridge you can take with you after you've crossed the river. But that is going to take the effort of broadcasters, satellite companies, cable, networks, content producers. It's going to be a heavy lift globally. Working with other trade groups such as the DVB and the ATSC, DVB here in Europe, ATSC in the Americas. That is going to be a massive initiative, and we're just starting out on that journey. Anyone who would like to participate in that and learn more about what we're doing in Advanced TV can certainly join our working group.
Just for me, what is DVB?
DVB? DVB is a television trade organization based in Brussels that is established the technical standard for legacy television, for linear TV. They were created, I want to say they were created in 1992, and they are the equivalent of what we have in the US called the ATSC, which was established in 1986, which is the technical standard setting body for the television industry in the Americas. It's based in the US, but LATAM and South America also use ATSC.
Okay, so 2 main priority. First is privacy. We're not too surprised about that.
Yep.
And the second one is advanced TV or CTV.
I look at CTV as a subset of advanced TV. Connected televisions. If anyone's who's bought a television in the last 5 years? We've all bought a TV probably in the last 5 years. That TV is connected to the internet. So any TV that's connected to the internet can start to report signal back around ad consumption, ad breaks, how ad pods are structured. You can start to hang other tokens off of that to create universal audience interoperability. That's our goal, and the goal is to be able to do it no matter what the television environment is, whether you're streaming something on Hulu or whether you're watching World Cup on on cable. The ability to have some universal addressability framework across all TV environments is our goal. The third is measurement, and it's cross environment measurement, cross media measurement, and cross channel measurement. That's something that we're going to be. I'm adding that this year as kind of a fourth pillar. of focus is really going to be in the area of robust technical standards around cross-environment measurements is another area that we'll be focused on. And these are really 3-year plans. We're not when I joined Tech Lab, I didn't want to approach it from the lens of, we have an annual plan, of course, but our annual plans are built off of a 3 to 5 year vision for the future. And I believe those are the 3 real core areas that the industry needs us to develop.
Maybe just to comment around, I think you say something around Europe was leading the privacy topic.
Yeah.
So there is this famous sentence, I don't know if you already hear it, but we say like, Americans innovate, the Chinese copy it, and the European regulate. So obviously it's a bit of a cliche, and I guess Europe would love to innovate more, and not only in regulation, but it's true that it was one of the things we experienced in the past years was Europe, and I think it was true also for IAB Europe, had a need to create a standard regarding privacy and regarding link to the implementation of GDPR. So it's obviously the TCF, the Transparency and Consent Framework. The goal of every standard is to have obviously something which is more global. We need, if we want to develop a business, an industry, it's important that everything is interoperable and you can scale your business, everything around the world, especially because marketers are global too. So if you want global budget, you need something, it needs to be easy to spend. I think it's also one of the success of the big platform.
Absolutely.
Is to be able to have one platform where you can deliver on ads everywhere in the world. That's probably what's programmatic and OpenRTB offered to everything. So
OpenRTB, VAST, like those are global technical standards.
The whole thing. So now we are seeing that Europe had to, and IAB Europe had to obviously address the privacy topic before that the US had this need, and before that it was coming to India, Brazil, etc. So that's why we, as an organization in IAB Europe, create the Transparency and Consent Framework because it was a real need of the industry to, before the deadline of 2018, and the implementation of GDPR, how do you share the consent of a user across all our complex OpenRTB world, and probably that the next thing is around carbon footprint as well. So we all feel, and especially here in Europe, it's going to be a global topic, obviously, but we see that there is a need around carbon footprint. What's going to be the standard? Do we need to share some information on every campaign in order to calculate the carbon footprint? And so as an advertiser, you're going to be able later to buy your ads in taking this criteria into account. So that's probably the next thing. And last thing, the third thing, I think, which we are seeing coming from France at least, and now in Europe, is retail media. So there is retail media is booming. We are seeing it, but it's very fragmented. Every retailer is becoming a media, and obviously one of the goals is to close the loop. So check the conversion of the people buying on the platform after that. And you have Amazon, and you have a lot of different players. And if you don't have an harmonization of this KPI on the measurement, it's gonna be if you check, I invite you to go to the Daniel Knapp, which is the Chief Economist Officer of IAB Europe, is going to have a keynote later on the boom of retail media. And I think it's like we're talking about dozens of billions in few years in this area. If we want this to materialize, it need to have a kind of standardization. So we create a working group at Alliance Digitale, IAB France, and we trying to offer some solution in order to harmonize it. IAB Europe just created a working group, is launching the first working group regarding retail media, and it's probably one of the one of the topic. We will need the help,
absolutely,
global help on that, because again, it's retail media. Even if it's different, Amazon is a worldwide player, but other retailers are local. You don't have, Walmart is not present in Europe, Carrefour is not present in the US,
right,
etc., etc.
Right.
Retailers are local, a bit like the publisher, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to probably be the next step where we will need your help.
Yeah, and I think you touched on green. I think green's another area for collaboration with Tech Lab, and not just IAB Europe and regional IABs across Europe, but globally. I think that's another area of collaboration where Tech Lab can work with IAB France and IAB Europe and IAB Italy and IAB Germany, IAB UK, IAB Brazil, et cetera, on how do we set technical standards to measure the carbon footprint of our ecosystem and manage. We can't manage what we can't measure, so we have to start with measurement. But I think that's another area of collaboration. And I think Europe also leads. I think at least conceptually, I think Europe leads from a green perspective. Although it is definitely come to the forefront of advertisers in the U.S. because consumers in the U.S. are starting to make their brand purchase decisions off of how green that advertiser is. It is a top priority, particularly for millennial and Gen Zs. So advertisers are making it a priority just due to consumer pressure in the U.S. also. So green's going to be a big thing where we can collaborate for sure.
One last question for you, and maybe also prepare your question after that if you have question for Tony here. So let's talk about cookie depreciation. It's one of the main concerns of the advertiser today is the future of addressability on the open internet. In terms of standards, how the industry standard might look like in the cookieless area. And now that we have maybe a closer picture of the deadline regarding Google Chrome.
Do we?
No, I'm not. So for the moment, it's 2024, right?
But, as of today.
But it's
Check
true
your
that
watch.
as of today, I even heard people were saying, okay, now it's sure it's going to be 2025 because there is some test with the CMA, and so it's not possible that it's going to be ready in 2024. So just as a first information, it's probably 2025. So so how do you manage that? This timeline and the standard in the cookieless area, or maybe we even not sure it's going to happen.
It's a great question. How we manage that. A couple challenges with that. I mean, some of the standards that we have coming out and some of the things that we release, seller-defined audiences, for example. I have noticed more traction with that in Q4. A lot more inquiries in the US and in Europe and the UK. We've had some inquiries from Asia Pacific on seller-defined audiences. But I think the longer Chrome delays the deprecation of the third-party cookie, the more it's going to push out, frankly, the adoption of alternative solutions. But seller-defined audiences is one area where we think that there's real opportunity for the industry to innovate with us on that. In fact, we won Adweek's. I don't think Tech Lab's ever won an industry award, but last week Tech Lab won Adweek's Innovator of the Year award for seller-defined audiences.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to innovate there. So that's one. I think other areas are clean room standards, clean room interoperability standards is something we're working on in the addressability working group. That's another area, and then ID interoperability. So how do we ensure the ID5s and the UID2s and the new stars and the live ramps, and how do we ensure that there's interoperability between those ID resolution services is another area where we can focus on standards. And then privacy enhancing technologies. I think that's something everyone in this room should be aware of, and I'm not going to be able to accurately provide an overview of privacy enhancing technologies, or PETs for short, in the time we have left, but I would encourage everyone to do some research or at least join our PETs working group. There's a lot of education going on within the Tech Lab on privacy enhancing technologies and how it applies to specific advertising use cases. Our focus is currently on attribution, but I do think privacy enhancing technologies has a place in the future of our industry without question. It's just going to take time for adoption. And I just wanted to key in on one other thing. Everyone's focused on Chrome's deprecation of the cookie, I would argue 50% of that train has pulled out of the station already. Apple took their cookie football and went home 2.5 years ago. Roughly, that represents easily 50% at least of the cookie pool in the US, less so internationally, but still a significant chunk. So the cookie deprecation time period is here. It's here now, and we need to pursue alternatives today. But again, I think the key things we're working on are software-defined audiences, clean room technical standards, privacy-enhancing technologies, and then tokenization or ID interoperability technical standards are the four major things we're focused on.
Thank you, Tony. I really encourage everyone here and every company in this room to take a membership to Tech Lab. It's really important to, I know that, especially when you're a small company, dedicate a resource to follow the different working group, it's hard. But in the same time, you're going to be in the first place to shape the future, but also be the first one to know what's going to be the next iteration of a technical standard, and then innovate and be the first one to bring into the market as well. And that's a competitive advantage, I think. So, and we have, and just so you know, you have, as a member of Alliance Digital, I hope everyone is here. Now we have a special incentive and discount.
Yes.
We do have a discount. You can take your membership of Alliance Digital, and you have a special discount to have this incremental membership of Tech Lab, so don't hesitate.
Yeah, the working groups, the Tech Lab, but we don't, I mean, yes, we come up with a lot of ideas, but we don't define the standards. The working groups, the people in this room, the people in rooms across the globe, they set the standards. We steward those standards. So I would encourage you to join Tech Lab through IAB France, because there is a discount. But yeah, you set the standards. We do not do these things on our own. We can't do these things on our own. We're 22 people setting global technical standards. We need the working groups to work with us to do this.
Any question for Tony in the room? Here.
Hi, I'm Tung. I'm working for Bedrock Streaming. We provide platform for the broadcasters of the RTL group. Okay, so I'm working on the ad tech part for the platform. We see, the emergence of, the AVOD platform in the US, and now in France with the tiers of Disney that's to come and Netflix now. Mm-hmm. And of course, we always need to see what would be the next ad formats besides pre-roll, mid-rolls, etc. And you see there's ad pause ads formats that we can see now on Hulu, mm-hmm. on Paramount Plus. We already have that on M6, but everybody's using different technology to do that, whether it is a display ad server or video ad server. And on our side, we like to maybe try to, everyone's using the same technology. So would that be a way to standardize, make sure that it is a non-linear creative, with using VAST, for example, or using display, Is there some discussion regarding that, just to promote that new format? Yeah,
there's been some talk in the CTV technical working group around this. So there has been discussion on it. There's no consensus or no majority on it's. We're early in the discussions. That's why we're nascent. But yeah, that is being discussed. I don't think it's saying, VAST is the standard or your display technical standards is the right way. I think it's going to come down to probably more technical standards around measurement of that unit. I think it's a brilliant unit, by the way. I think the polished unit is an absolutely brilliant unit. I think it's going to come down to really what the technical standards are around measurement, not necessarily being prescriptive as to whether it's VAST or it's a rich media standard.
Une dernière question, last question for Tony. Do we have a question in the room? In any case, Tony will remain here offline if there is question after the. Any other one? One question here. Short question, short answer.
I'm Seb, sorry. It's not specifically from Ubiquity, sorry. Oh, okay. Just wondering how you see the future of the equivalent to ads.txt on the buy side. I know it's been
buyers.json, demand chain objects, yeah.
Because it's pretty nascent, so how do you see the future of that?
Adoption has been weak of buyers.json and demand chain object. Why that is not entirely clear to me. There's actually a Twitter thread going on right now where I think Gavin brought it up, and then Judd Spencer from Trade Desk responded. Shaley, who's our COO and EVP of product, responded. I think a couple reasons. I don't think Tech Lab's done as good enough a job as we could to product market it, and we're going to revisit that in the first half of next year. We're going to do a push on it. We're also going to do a roadshow to advertisers and agencies on the value of buyers.json and the demand chain object as well. So I think some of it comes down to product marketing. And I think that product marketing or that evangelization to the buy side leads to incentives. No Tech Lab standard is adopted because we can't enforce it, right? Tech Lab standards are adopted based on awareness and their merit. I mean, who here adopted VAST 3? Anyone? Yeah, exactly, right? So it didn't have merit with the industry. I think phase one of this is really going out and doing an awareness and education push in Q1 of next year, and we've got plans to do that. And then having the buy side see the value of why demand chain object and buyers.json should be adopted. And we may get feature requests to evolve those frameworks, which of course we'll bring back to the working groups and we'll do. But I think it's going to start with awareness and evangelization to advertisers and agencies as to why that's important. But yeah, the adoption, we could say it's nascent. It's been over a year, and it's been very thin. So, I give us a solid D on the adoption of that. We also, through the Transparency Center, I should mention in some meetings earlier today, I think it's important. The Transparency Center, I don't know if those of you that are familiar with it, for those of you that are not, I encourage you to Google, look up IAB Tech Lab Transparency Center. We are publishing standards adoption by company across the ecosystem in the Transparency Center. So I think for people to understand what's in their supply chain, so think of it as like a nutrition label for what's in my supply chain, that is published in the Transparency Center. We announced that week before last. So I think also some transparency around standards adoption will also drive adoption of standards. So that's another thing. So I'd encourage folks to go to the Transparency Center and see who has adopted what in the supply chain. And if you're a buyer and you see that your DSP or someone in the supply chain hasn't adopted buyers.json or the demand chain object, you as an advertiser and agency should demand the adoption of that. If you're buying through a supply chain that has not adopted ads.txt, supply chain object, demand chain object, buyers.json, you are buying at your own risk. So if you do not have a comprehensive adoption of Tech Lab standards in the supply chain, you could be susceptible to fraud. It's entirely possible.
I think we can applaud Tony. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.